What if the world's most iconic entertainer was also one of its most misunderstood figures? What if everything you thought you knew about Michael Jackson was only part of the story? Because Michael 2026 doesn't just celebrate the king of pop, it challenges the audience. It pulls you deep into the brilliance, the pressure, the fame, and the controversy that surrounded one man who changed music forever and paid a price few could truly understand. From electrifying stage performances that feel almost supernatural to deeply personal, uncomfortable moments behind closed doors, this film walks a tightrope between legacy and truth. And by the time you reach the ending, one question will stay with you. Did the world make Michael Jackson, or did it slowly break him? Tonight, we're breaking down everything, the full story, the hidden layers, and the ending that has already sparked intense debate across America. Before diving into the film itself, it's important to understand why Michael 2026 is one of the most anticipated and controversial biopics in modern Hollywood history. Directed by Antoine Fuqua, known for his gritty and emotionally grounded storytelling, and starring Jaffer Jackson, the real-life nephew of Michael Jackson, the film immediately positioned itself as something different. This wasn't just another celebrity biopic. It was being shaped from within the Jackson legacy itself, with involvement from the Michael Jackson estate. That alone raised eyebrows. Supporters argued this meant authenticity, access to personal archives, real stories, and emotional truth. Critics questioned whether the film could truly be objective, especially given the long-standing controversies that have followed Michael Jackson for decades. Because you cannot talk about Michael Jackson without acknowledging both sides of his legacy. On one hand, you have the undeniable impact. Albums like Thriller, still the best-selling album of all time, revolutionary music videos, genre-defining performances, and a cultural footprint that reshaped global entertainment. On the other hand, there are allegations, legal battles, and public scrutiny that intensified, especially after documentaries like Leaving Neverland, which reignited debate across the United States and beyond. Michael, 2026, enters this space, not quietly but boldly. And from the very first act, it becomes clear this film is not trying to be neutral. It's trying to tell a story, a human story. The film opens not with music, but with silence. A young Michael sits backstage, barely a teenager, listening to the distant roar of a crowd. The camera lingers. No dialogue, just anticipation. Then suddenly, chaos. Stage lights flash, screaming fans. And we are thrown into the rise of the Jackson 5. From here, the film builds its emotional foundation: control, pressure, and perfection. We see the influence of Joe Jackson, portrayed not as a simple villain, but as a complex, often harsh figure driven by ambition. The film suggests that greatness didn't come naturally. It was forced, shaped, demanded, and that pressure never left. As Michael transitions into adulthood, the tone shifts. The colors become darker. The music becomes more experimental. We witness the creation of Thriller, not just as a success, but as a moment of obsession. Endless rehearsals, perfectionism bordering on exhaustion. Then comes the peak. The film recreates iconic performances. Billie Jean, the moonwalk, moments that feel almost mythological. The audience inside the film mirrors real life. Stunned, emotional, mesmerized. But just as quickly as the film lifts you up, it brings you down. The narrative begins to fracture. Tabloid headlines flash across the screen. Allegations, courtrooms, interviews, isolation. We see Neverland, not as a fantasy alone, but as a symbol, a place where Michael tried to reclaim a childhood he never had. The film doesn't ignore controversy, but it frames it carefully, often from Michael's perspective, emphasizing confusion, denial, and emotional vulnerability. As reports suggest, the film chooses not to deeply dramatize certain accusations in explicit detail, instead focusing on how they affected his life, career, and mental state. And this is where the tone becomes deeply introspective. Michael is no longer just performing for the world. He's retreating from it. From a cinematic standpoint, Antoine Fuqua's direction leans heavily into emotional realism. The handheld camera work, the tight close-ups, the silence between dialogue, all of it creates an almost documentary-like intimacy. Legally, the film walks a careful line. It acknowledges the existence of allegations and legal battles, referencing real-life events such as the 2005 trial, while avoiding definitive claims that could be interpreted as taking a legal stance. This aligns with how biopics often navigate unresolved or disputed histories. Financially, the film is expected to perform strongly at the box office due to global interest in Michael Jackson's life. Early projections and industry analysis suggest massive international appeal, especially across North America and Europe. Media coverage has already been intense. Major outlets have debated whether the film humanizes Michael too much or finally gives context that was missing for years. Within hours of early screenings, reactions began flooding platforms like X, TikTok, and YouTube, and they were divided. Some viewers called it heartbreaking, saying the film made them see Michael as a victim of fame and pressure. Others criticized it for softening controversial aspects, arguing that a full story must include uncomfortable truths in greater depth. Clips of Jaffer Jackson's performance went viral, many stunned by how closely he captures Michael's voice, movement, and presence. The conversation quickly turned cultural, not just about Michael Jackson, but about how America remembers its icons. The release of Michael 2026 could redefine how biopics are made, especially when estates and families are directly involved. If successful, it may open the door for more legacy-controlled storytelling. But it also raises questions. Can a story ever be fully objective when told from within? For Jaffer Jackson, this role could be career-defining. For Antoine Fuqua, it adds another complex project to his filmography. And for the public, it may reshape conversations that have remained unresolved for decades. At its core, the film asks something deeply human. What happens when a child is turned into a global icon before they can understand the cost? We see loneliness. We see longing. We see a man trying to hold on to pieces of himself, while the world constantly demands more. Whether you view Michael Jackson as a legend, a controversial figure, or something in between, the film forces you to confront the emotional reality behind the headlines. And that's what makes it powerful. The final act slows down dramatically. Gone are the massive crowds and flashing lights. Instead, we see reflection. Michael, older now, sits alone, watching past performances, almost like memories playing back in fragments. The film doesn't present a traditional ending with closure. Instead, it presents a question. Legacy. Was he understood or just watched? The final scene mirrors the opening, silence before sound. But this time, the stage is empty. And as the screen fades, the message is clear. Michael Jackson was never just one thing. He was a phenomenon, a mystery, and a human being caught somewhere in between. If this breakdown gave you a deeper understanding of Michael 2026, not just as a film, but as a story that still resonates today, then this is where your voice matters. As the credits begin to roll in Michael 2026, the emotional weight doesn't fade. It lingers, because what this film does in its final stretch is something very few biopics attempt. It stops trying to tell you who Michael Jackson was, and instead forces you to confront why you believe what you believe about him. And that shift is intentional. According to industry insiders and early interpretations, the last act of the film is structured almost like a psychological mirror, not just for the character, but for the audience itself. One of the most powerful elements in the film is how it uses visual contrast to tell a deeper story without words. Throughout the movie, we see two worlds, the stage and isolation. When Michael performs, the frame is wide, bright, alive. The camera moves with energy. The sound is overwhelming, screams, music, applause. It feels almost unreal, like you're watching something larger than life. But when he's alone, everything tightens. The camera closes in. The colors fade. Silence dominates. This contrast becomes most noticeable in the Neverland sequences. Neverland isn't portrayed simply as a magical escape. It's shown as something more complicated, a constructed world, a place that feels safe, but also detached from reality. Some critics have interpreted this as the film's way of showing emotional regression, a man trying to rebuild something he never had, a normal childhood. But here's where it gets even deeper. In multiple scenes, Michael is surrounded by children laughing, playing while he stands slightly apart, watching. Not fully part of the moment, not fully outside it either. That visual distance is deliberate. It suggests not belonging anywhere, not in childhood, not in adulthood. Let's talk about Jaffer Jackson, because his portrayal is the backbone of this entire film. Early reactions across the U.S. have highlighted not just the physical resemblance, the voice, the movement, the iconic gestures, but something more difficult to capture: emotional restraint. He doesn't overplay the role. In fact, some of the most powerful moments are when he says almost nothing at all. There's a scene late in the film, no music, no dialogue, where Michael is preparing to step outside, knowing cameras are waiting. He pauses, just for a second, but in that second, you see fear, exhaustion, and acceptance all at once. That moment has already been described by some reviewers as one of the most haunting portrayals in modern biopic history. Now, we need to address the most debated aspect of Michael, 2026. The film does acknowledge the controversies surrounding Michael Jackson, including legal battles and public accusations. However, it does so with a very specific narrative lens. Instead of recreating allegations in explicit detail, the story focuses on the media storm, the emotional toll, the isolation that followed. We see courtrooms, we see headlines, we hear fragments of interviews, but we rarely step fully into the perspective of the accusers. And that choice has sparked serious debate. Some argue this keeps the film respectful and avoids speculative dramatization of deeply sensitive claims. Others believe it creates an incomplete picture. From a journalistic perspective, it's important to note many aspects of Michael Jackson's life remain contested, and different audiences will interpret this film based on their own understanding of those events. The movie doesn't settle that debate. It adds to it. One of the most fascinating storytelling choices is how the media is portrayed, not as individuals, but as a constant presence. Cameras flash like lightning. Headlines appear almost like attacks. Crowds shift from adoration to judgment in seconds. At one point, a montage shows Michael walking through a hallway while overlapping voices from TV reports echo around him, praise, criticism, speculation, all blending into noise. It's overwhelming. And that's the point. The film suggests that Michael wasn't just dealing with fame. He was dealing with a version of himself created by everyone else. This is where the film becomes bigger than just one person, because what Michael, 2026, really explores is something deeply embedded in American culture: the creation and destruction of icons. From Elvis to modern celebrities, the pattern is familiar. Build them up, watch them closely, turn on them, then reflect after it's too late. The film doesn't say this directly, but it shows it, and it leaves the audience to connect the dots. If you go back and rewatch the beginning of the film, you'll notice something subtle. That opening backstage moment, it's not just about stage fright. It's about separation. Even as a child, before the fame
My grandma means
fully
everything to
explodes,
me. She's
Michael
someone
was
that's
already
incredibly
alone
strong,
in
and
the
she's
crowd.
dealt with so much.
Thinking about doing a documentary, Uncle,
About Michael?
about Michael.
But no
Okay.
real
We are a
connection.
family, a loving
Moments of
family, but no one
success
sees that.
followed
You
by
know,
silence.
they only see headlines.
Celebration followed by scrutiny. The film is structured like a loop. It begins with anticipation.
About the
It
legacy,
ends with
but
reflection. And
I'm
in
scared
between,
I might
it
do
shows the
more
cost.
damage than good
Many
by
viewers
doing.
The
have
center
said
of it
the
all
end feels
was
incomplete.
Michael Jackson,
But that's not a flaw.
her son.
It's a design choice, because the story of Michael Jackson doesn't have a clean ending. Even after his
Kindness,
passing in 2009,
her strength,
debates, documentaries,
to build
and
something the
discussions
world called a
continue.
legend.
His music still
She gave the
dominates
world her
streaming
son,
platforms.
and
His influence is everywhere, and opinions about him remain deeply divided.